So all day today was huge breaking news from Margarita Simonyan, right? She's the editor in chief of RT, RIA Novosti, and Sputnik. So she's the head and she's the boss. And so she had this audio that she wanted to release. So she started out by releasing the text of it, which I translated, which isn't perfect. It's not going to be perfect because, again, it's different languages. So a few things are lost, but you get the gist. I posted it. You guys can look at it publicly and read it. But I kind of have a summation as to what happened. So this was an audio that was intercepted via on a phone call. Um, and this phone call happened last month on February 19th. And it was between these high ranking German military officials, and Russia intercepted this call, and it shows this plan. It talks about a plan to bomb the Crimean bridge. And then the audio was actually released later, and I put it in the thread. I added it in the thread. It's been translated into English, several parts, but it's not perfect because, again, German is also another language that's quite difficult for most people. Now, I'll read the first part of this transcript, and then I'm just going to highlight what happened because it was a 40-minute long dialogue. It's a lot of things they were talking about, right? So that is what happened. There was the conversation that took place between the head of the operations and exercises department of the Bundeswehr Air Force Command, Graf, and the Bundeswehr BBC Inspector Gerhardt, and the employees of the air operations center of the Bundeswehr Space Command, Fensk and Frost. So all of these people were having a conversation over the phone. Now, the crux, the main meat of what was said is here. And it was said by one of these men,
Can I ask a quick question before you get started, fam? Does this have to do for when the Crimea bridge got hit? And this is now
No,
they're finding out. So this is a totally different attack then.
there's no attack. This is literally them talking last month about
Okay, got it.
wanting to
Wanting
use
to. Yeah.
Taurus missiles on the Crimean bridge. These Taurus missiles, which by the way, I'll explain in a second, Scholz, Chancellor Olaf Scholz, has been saying Germany will not allow Ukraine to have access to these long range Taurus missiles because they could have an accident. We know that it would be on purpose, but he said accident, where these missiles could reach as far as Moscow. So he got blasted for saying this. This happened just a few days ago. I actually reported on it. Now, yesterday actually that happened. So the crux of what was almost said in this 40-minute dialogue is here. He said, this was Frodstad who said this, right? He said, I came to the conclusion that there are two interesting targets, the bridge in the east and the ammunition depots above. The bridge in the east is hard to reach. It's a rather small target, but the Taurus missiles that I just mentioned can do it. The ammunition depots can also be hit. If we consider the bridge, I don't think Taurus is enough, and we need to have an idea of how it might work. And for that, we need a satellite data. I don't know if we can train the Ukrainians for such a task in a short time. And we are talking about a month. So he's talking about not just using the Taurus missiles, but training them how to do this, how to go about this, right? And just so you all know, it would take about 8 months to get this up and running. They only have a month at that point. That's what they were talking about. Now, he also said, what would the Taurus attack on the bridge look like? From an operational perspective, I can't estimate how quickly the Ukrainians will be able to learn how to plan such an action and how quickly integration will occur. But since we are talking about the bridge and military bases, I understand they want to get them as soon as possible. So this is a whole conversation about how to literally bomb the Crimean bridge, which Crimea is a part of Russia now. It has been for a long time, but now more so. And they already, as Pasta mentioned, had tried to bomb the Crimean bridge out of complete oblivion. They've done it, and they've tried doing it again several times. But this is another escalation. Why? Well, because you have Olaf Scholz saying, hey, we're not going to do that. We're not going to allow Taurus missiles to be used by Ukraine. And now you have high-ranking officials in the German army, in the German military, sitting down and discussing, yes, we want the Taurus missiles to be used by Ukraine to bomb the Crimean bridge. So they're plotting a terrorist attack, for lack of, to surmise everything. Really, that's what it is, against Russia and against the people in Crimea. And this call was, of course, intercepted by Russia, and then it was put out. So now one of the participants, which this is what makes it even worse, one of the participants that was there, he is a military attaché in the U.S. He's the head of the Operations and Exercises Department of the Bundeswehr Air Force Command, GRAF. And he participated in the discussion on this attack, and he served as a military attaché in the United States. In fact, in these pictures, you can see the American flags behind him. He is a part of the U.S. military contingent. The other guy, one of the other four in the conversation, is Air Force Inspector Gerhardt, and he's been involved since 2018, and he has around 30,000 people, it is believed, under his command. And he's credited for an active role in the German Air Force, and he's still an active pilot. Now, like I said, so far as to my knowledge, they haven't answered. The German Ministry of Defense has refused to answer anything regarding this whole situation. And all of this, like I said, comes after Olaf Scholz got pounded by the UK and France for refusing to give Ukraine these long-distance Taurus missiles. And he said he didn't want Germany to become an active participant in the war, which clearly, if this is what's going on behind the scenes, that's exactly what they are. And he also said that the missile could potentially hit Moscow. Now, basically, my whole analysis, right, is literally what we see here in Germany is a tug and pull. We're seeing a little bit of division with Olaf Scholz basically saying we shouldn't do that. And then with the military contingent saying we are actually going to do that and actually planning on ways to execute this. And there are elements in NATO who are actually aware that what Putin said yesterday in his state to the country, that if they continue pushing, there will be a global escalation, and that Russia has no interest in starting this. But if they actually put like NATO troops in Ukraine, like President Emmanuel Macron was literally saying that we need to go put NATO troops in Ukraine. And if they provide these Taurus missiles and they go after Crimea, and then they are escalating the potential disaster to go after Moscow, which Olaf himself said, then yes, there's going to be obviously a nuclear catastrophic war because there is no other way. And what we're seeing here is that this is an existential war for both NATO and Russia. This is something I've been saying for a long time. There is no way Russia is going to stop their objective, which is to win the special military operation, to defeat Ukraine, to denazify, and achieve this freedom, this liberation for all these areas in the Donbass. They're not going to stop until they do that. But NATO, the United States, in majority, clearly want to continue escalating, right? So this is obviously why he faced so much blowback for saying that the UK and France were aiding in target control. And I think all of this right now is clearly working in Russia's favor because we're seeing the cards from NATO be laid out on the table. We're seeing everything come out. We're seeing how they're operating. We're seeing that they're ready to go to literally war with Russia full on, because no matter how you try to twist it, Germany then at this point, if they continue on this route, will be directly involved. And you can even say that they are. You can even say that NATO is really admitting that they're not using Ukraine as a proxy, because without the weapons, without the money, without the intelligence apparatus behind Ukraine, because that also was verified by the New York Times as a PR narrative management piece, right? That the CIA has been aiding Ukraine for a decade. Well, no shit. Of course they have. But all of this coming together is showing how far they're willing to go to attack Russia. So,
well, I want to point out that I think that as these things start to unfold, you're going to see that Russia's objectives are a little bit different than they were when they first started the military operation. I don't see a way out of this where Russia's going to say, "All right, we have to change government in Kiev," right? I don't know which
right.
means they're going to do it, but they're not going to be able to sit still because no matter what, I think a lot of the things that could possibly happen is these type of attacks can come from the West by using Ukraine as the excuse. Oh, we didn't want them to do
Mhm.
this, but Zelensky and his regime or whoever it is takes over. They're the ones who got a little crazy. They're the ones who got a little bit jumpy, and they can hide behind them. They can use them as a true proxy, in other words. So at the end of the day, you said something that was very important that Russia's not going to stop until they're done with their goal when it comes to the Ukraine, right, and what they wanted to do. But I think that goal now is changing. And I don't see a way out of this where Russia's going to have to not be able to do something in which they remove the government in Kiev, you know?
Well, they can't
So just like the
trust.
United States uses any type of, tragedy or
Yeah.
craziness as an excuse to further their actions, right? This event means we have to go and do that, Putin did this, we have to do that. We have to, respond. Look for the Russian government and the Russian Federation, along with Vladimir Putin, to look for a reason to say, okay, now enough is enough. We have no choice but to take out the Zelensky regime in Kiev because no matter what, the West will always be crazy and plot to do things like they're doing right here. I don't see a way the French, France, are not going to have to put troops on the ground if they want to continue to use this money laundering scheme, which is the Ukraine war, to continue. Right? A lot
Yeah.
of financial backings depend upon it. The same people who put Biden in power and put Macron in power, who put Schultz in power, those people right there want this to continue. They want this Ukrainian war to continue. It's such a freaking it's like Fat Bastard. Remember from The Spy Who Shagged Me Part 2, Austin Powers? I eat because I'm fat. I'm fat because I eat. They got to continue to make it going. So if, we have to replenish weapons in the United States. How do you do that? Well, you get rid of the old weapons. Well, they've gotten rid of all the old weapons, handing them off to the Ukraine, handing them off to Taiwan. Most of them being handed off to the Kiev regime. So now that manufacturers consent, fam, for us to get more contracts at home to buy new weapons, as well as spending money to send weapons off. And it all comes out of the taxpayer's pocket, whether it be in France, whether it be in Germany, whether it be in the United States, whether it be in Great Britain. So I see the tables turning. I heard Mark Sloboda on a show today. I forgot his name, the guy who does the Syriana news, Gorvik. I can't even say his name properly. You know it, right?
Work.
Gavork. He had another guest on. It was awesome. They were talking about that. And I think a lot of people, they just see it right now. Vladimir Putin and the Russian Federation have no choice but to remove that government in Kiev. And if they don't, stuff like this will continue to happen, whether it be from Germany, France, United States, or Great Britain. I think at the end of the day, those same people, it's not so much a nation state like Germany who's making these decisions or their generals are making these isolated decisions. I think they get orders from those above. But a German proxy, a French proxy, a United States proxy, a Great Britain proxy, meaning the governments themselves are all run and controlled by that same people, that military industrial complex across the board. So at the end of the day, look for the Russian Federation to eventually remove Zelensky's regime. They'll probably tip the hat so Zelensky can go over and enjoy his house over here in Miami. But they're going to have to remove that government, fam. They're going to have no choice. So, I mean, I would think that they would learn from the Americans on the way to start color revolutions from the inside. Soros, the way he took over a lot of media in Ukraine and buying a lot more media now, small media outlets to try and stir up shit. Well, now is the time where a lot of Ukrainians are going to be very frustrated with what's going on. Almost 500,000 of them dead, a whole younger generation wiped out. The average age is 43 on the front line. Look for the Russians to have some backdoor noise, to start some color revolution, start it up, and then follow behind and remove that government. They're going to have no choice.
I don't think they're going to they're not going to start a color revolution. That's just not their MO. They're not going to do that.
It's not their MO, but it would be a lot more bloodshed unless you have consent from a group of Ukrainians going in there and saying, okay. And I don't know if it's necessarily a color revolution, fam. there's a lot of Ukrainians who see Russians as their brothers and sisters. So
Yeah,
maybe
and
not a
all of them
color
are.
revolution, but a nudge
Yeah,
of sorts.
I just don't see the Russians doing anything close to that. I don't even think they want to take Ukraine. I think
I think
there
they have no
might come
choice.
there might come a point where what's left of Ukraine is basically not very much at all. As long as they're securing what they need to secure, then that's what it'll be. Whether it's taking most of Ukraine, whether it's taking what they initially said of Ukraine, I think it's going to be more. I agree with that than that was initially programmed. But what I think we're seeing here is again an existential war between two opposing sides, the side of the East that Russia is representing, in spite of the fact that Russia is also partly European. It's obviously partly Asian as well. And so you have that side opposing the West and opposing all of NATO, which, by the way, Ursula von der Leyen really literally just said that she wants to take Russians' frozen assets to pay for
Yeah.
Ukraine, to give Ukraine more money because the EU is out of money. And you'll see a package that I did on that tomorrow because the EU is fully out of money and they have nowhere else to go. And they're actually entering a recession all throughout Europe, especially Germany. Germany's entered a hard recession. France has entered one as well. And now they're doing austerity cuts in 2024. And you have the French farmers and the Polish farmers have been protesting, and farmers in general have been protesting. And they are going to take away some of this money that they were given. So now you're going to see these protests ramp back up again. And Germany has basically succumbed because of the energy crisis and the sanctions and all of that. We know that the United States was behind Nord Stream pipeline explosions. So that was all part of it. So all of this is coming to, I think, this point where we're seeing all of the tactics used by NATO come together. And NATO, of course, is controlled by the United States, as you just said. And so I think what we're seeing here is I don't see a way out of this besides a nuclear catastrophe unless somebody in NATO backs out, because Russia will continue to commit to their goals. And the EU is saying that Ukraine, no matter what happens with their economies, Ukraine must receive $3 million per month in money. So that is what they're committing to. They want to continue to supply Ukraine all this money, and they're not going to stop. And so if they're not going to stop, and if they're talking about NATO troops on the ground, and if they're talking about missiles, despite the fact that some are saying, whoa, wait a minute, don't do that. Even the US told Macron, like, no, we're not going to do that. But really behind the scenes, it clearly looks like they're plotting something behind the scenes. And the Crimean bridge thing isn't a surprise to some of us here. They have been wanting to attack Crimea for a long time. So it's no surprise that they would do it in the spring.
And to Saul K baby construct in the chat, I'm not saying that what the United States is doing is the right thing to do as far as when they try a regime change. What I'm saying is that they're masters of doing it. They've done it for so long, and you got to fight fire with fire sometimes. You know what I'm saying? You can't bring a knife to a gunfight, and I'm one to think that, the Russian Federation and Vladimir Putin were very hesitant in getting involved in Ukraine. They should have got involved a lot longer. We'd have 15,000 innocent civilians that were slaughtered in the Donbass regions that might have still been here. I don't know. I'm not saying that. But I think sometimes the Russian Federation acts with too much restraint. And that's all I'm saying. I don't agree with it, but I think that there's no way out of this unless they have to change that government in Kiev. I don't see a way out of it. And, maybe I'm wrong. And I just don't see it. They're going to have to remove, denazification means denazification across the board. You're going to have to remove that.
It's beyond denazification.
What?
It's beyond denazification now. It is protecting them from being taken over by NATO. That's what it's protecting the entire existence of Russia. It's beyond denazification. It's protecting Russia as we know it. That's how this is looked on, and Russia understands this, and I think NATO understands this. I think the United States understands this. In fact, they have said both the EU and in the United States has said if Russia cannot succeed in this. Macron said it. Several other leaders in the EU have said it. Russia cannot succeed at
No.
all in this, and that's the line. So
Yeah.
will things get worse? I believe so.
I think that too as well. That I said this the other day, and I realized this while I had Garland Nixon and Dr. Wilmer Lee on my show, and we were talking about is there any difference between Trump and Biden? I realized in the middle of that show that I want Biden to win the presidency because I think that's the only thing. It's fam. It's funny. It's fam. It's funny. We used to say like, oh, we don't want this Democrat to win because then everybody will go back to sleep. I think that's what will happen if Donald Trump wins. I do believe that Trump is the lesser of two evils, and if Donald Trump wins, the United States as a whole goes back to sleep because he has a supporter who's going to support him no matter what. Joe Biden wins, they won't believe it's real, they will believe it's fake, and we have more of a chance for revolution out there. As far as real change going, I don't think we'll see anything really come from the United States or Great Britain. I think our best chances are if the Germans, meaning the citizens, or the French, meaning the citizens, show up at the gate and start Mussolini some people. That's the only thing that would put the fear of God into the oligarchs and the leaders in the United States and in London where they might back down. And they'll learn from FDR. Like FDR said, these people are going to eat us if we don't give them something. So I think that's the only thing that will come about real change because you can't depend on the United States. We're so far split. People do believe in elections. They believe that Donald Trump is that next coming of God, unfortunately, no matter what. I mean, and he's been so bad. Not even just taking the bait. And what are people doing, fam? They're making excuses, like you said in the beginning of the show. He has to do this. Donald Trump didn't say he wants to get rid of NATO. He just wants to say that he wants them to pay a fair share. Well, that's bad because that's still aggression towards Russia. That's still war and saber rattling with Russia. He should say, no, I do want to get rid of NATO. It's obsolete. That's where he once was. He's not there. Oh, Nord Stream 2, I stopped it, fam. I did it. I told them, if you do that, you're going to have to get, he did his whole bullshit instead of pointing out that what Joe Biden did was wrong and blowing it up. He kind of like okayed it because he said, I stopped it myself at one point, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that he just buys right into. And like we said, Israel. I mean, how much difference is it from Joe Biden and Donald Trump? Oh, Donald Trump's less woke. Big friggin' deal. And if you watch mainstream media on the right, meaning Fox News or Newsmax, 75% of their coverage is at the border. If they close down the border and they were to stop the migration coming to the United States, is anything going to really change, ladies and gentlemen? What is going to change? Well, it changed last time under Donald Trump. Really? Did we systemically change in the United States? Did manufacturing come back? No, we still had a service-based economy. And guess what? Our generation still wasn't buying houses and the homeless number still increased. So don't tell me anything's going to change if we change those things. And nothing will change under Donald Trump. It will be more of the same. He is the lesser of two evils, and people will go back to sleep. They will be duped, and he will do a few things. Oh, he might let the J6 protesters gone who are being jailed up. Yeah, agreed. They shouldn't be jailed anyways, and they shouldn't be jailed for so fucking long. But what is going to systemically change about the United States if Donald Trump becomes president? Answer, nothing. Yet, as they say in Russia.
Quick, Oz, if you have a chance to show it, I just wanted to mention that Alexei Navalny was buried today at the Borisov Cemetery in Moscow. And I just want to point out who attended his funeral and who did not attend his funeral. So his parents attended his funeral, the ambassador of Germany, US, France, Austria, Portugal, Greece, Poland, Belgium, Ireland, and the deputy ambassador of Great Britain all attended his funeral. Can you believe that? All of these NATO ambassadors happened to just come to Russia to attend his funeral. So that's quite interesting to me.
You gotta give it up,
Yulia Navalnya's mother, Yulia Navalny, is his wife, who already had a boyfriend who lived in the UK. She was there, her mother, but actually Yulia Navalny herself was not there. She was not present, and neither were her children. So that goes to show you exactly. Here, you can turn it down because it's just they're speaking Russian. Who is really behind Navalny? Navalny is obviously a creation of the West. Navalny is really the vast majority of the people who even attended, who on the outside, because the mainstream media was trying to make it look like, look at all these people supporting Navalny, as they usually do. They were screaming anti-Russian, pro-Ukrainian slogans. So you should really question who was actually there. and how much of Russia do they represent? So that's all I really wanted to say about that because um,
You got to give it to them,
we,
fam.
yeah,
The
from the grave.
oligarchs and the elite, the ruling class, they never let the truth get in the way of a good bullshit story, fam. They never
True.
let the truth get in the way of a good bullshit story.